In the 16th century, Istanbul was the capital of the greatest Islamic empire the world has ever known. Ruled by Suleiman the Magnificent, it stretched from Baghdad to Budapest, commanding power over 3 continents. At the heart of Topkapi Palace lay the most mysterious and misunderstood institution in Ottoman history, the imperial harem. Into it came hundreds of women from across the empire and beyond. They were slaves, but not as you might imagine. For in the imperial palace, intelligence could equal influence, beauty could mean power, and motherhood could determine the fate of empires. This is the story of 3 extraordinary women who rose from slavery to become the true rulers of an empire. Their names were Hurrem, NURBANU, and Kösem, and their power would reshape the Ottoman world forever. In 1520, a newcomer entered the imperial palace. Her name was Alexandra Lisovska, daughter of a Ukrainian priest. Captured by slave hunters, she was about to enter a world beyond imagination. The women who entered the harem weren't Turkish. They were predominantly Christian, captured from the Caucasus, Ukraine, and across Europe. The enslavement of freeborn Muslims was forbidden by the Quran. A London mechanic sent by Queen Elizabeth to install an organ caught a forbidden glimpse. I did see 30 of the Grand Signor's concubines playing with a ball. At first I thought they were young men, but when I saw their hair hanging down, I knew them to be women, and very pretty ones indeed. But this was no pleasure palace. Western fantasies of harems were just that, fantasies. The imperial harem was more like the empire's only female university. When girls arrived, they were examined, bathed, and trained. They learned to read and write, studied the Quran, mastered palace etiquette, and became expert embroiderers whose work could be sold for profit. They learned how to walk backwards from the sultan's room, how to greet royalty, how to be respectful at all times. The harem was guarded by eunuchs, men who had been castrated to serve. It was forbidden by Islamic law to castrate Muslims, so Coptic Christian priests in Egypt performed the brutal procedure. The method was horrifying. Some had everything removed, making basic bodily functions nearly impossible. The priest's daughter was given a new name, Hurrem, meaning the laughing one. But what brought her to the Sultan's attention would change history. For most harem women, seeing the Sultan was impossible. You had to maneuver yourself into position with the one person who chose the Sultan's companions, his mother. An eligible concubine needed to be attractive and healthy, but also shrewd. The day she was chosen, she would go to the bathhouse for treatments, her hands and hair painted with henna, all body hair removed with an arsenic paste that could burn the skin. She would be dressed in jewels and new clothes, trained in the erotic arts by experienced women. "Your lord is like this, my son is like this," they would whisper. Then, while music played, she would enter the Sultan's chamber, running to kneel at his feet. Whatever happened that night, Suleiman wanted more. Hurrem was invited back again and again. The Venetian sources tell us he fell in love with her, but there was already a favorite, Mahidevran, mother of Prince Mustafa. When Hurrem arrived, Mahidevran attacked her, scratching her face and pulling her hair, calling her soiled meat from the slave market.
She refused, saying she was unworthy since she was soiled meat.
In 1521, Hurrem gave birth to her first son, Prince Mehmed. According to tradition, Suleiman should have moved to a new woman, but he didn't. Before Hurrem, the rule was one mother, one son. Hurrem broke that rule, producing several more sons. This was dangerous. Under Ottoman law, all sons had equal inheritance rights, but only one could become sultan. It was winner takes all, and the losers were executed. The Ottoman solution to succession was brutal but effective. No rival princes meant no civil wars. Then, in 1534, 14 years after they first met, Suleiman did the unthinkable. He married her. Sultans didn't marry their concubines. They didn't need to. But Suleiman freed Hurrem and made her his wife. Western observers were astounded. This week occurred a most extraordinary event, unprecedented in the history of the sultans. The Sultan has taken as his empress a slave woman from Russia. For the first time in Ottoman history, they had a queen. HURREM SULTAN, now a queen, built up diplomatic relations and influenced her husband politically. She occupied new apartments next to Suleiman's chambers, unprecedented access to power. But for long periods they were apart. Suleiman was a fighting sultan. He took Belgrade, destroyed Hungary's ruling class, and reached the gates of Vienna. Even on campaign, His thoughts were with Hurrem. He sent frequent love letters and poems. The green of my garden, my sweet sugar, my treasure, my love. My master of Egypt, my Joseph, my everything. The queen of my heart's realm, my land of the Roman Caesars, my Baghdad and Khorasan. Hurrem replied, if the seas were to become ink, and these trees pens, when could they write an account of this parting? Your son and daughter weep from missing you. But her letters also revealed fears for her son's safety. The favored heir was Prince Mustafa, son of her old rival Mahidevran. He had the support of the army and the Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha. Ibrahim had been Suleiman's companion since youth. They dined together, slept in the same room. Some Europeans even spoke of a sexual relationship. He was the top man in the empire after the Sultan himself. But Ibrahim's prestige threatened Hurrem. She wrote to Suleiman, you inquire about why I'm not with Ibrahim Pasha. You'll hear about it when I am granted my next meeting with you. Ibrahim played into her hands. He acquired enormous wealth through corruption and grew arrogant. He boasted to one ambassador, though I am the Sultan's slave, whatever I say is done. I can make a pasha out of a stable boy. I can give kingdoms to whomever I choose, and my lord will say nothing. Ibrahim's confidence was misplaced. On March 15, 1536, he accepted the Sultan's invitation to dinner as usual. They ate, talked, and went to bed together. The next morning, Ibrahim's body was found outside the palace, strangled with a bowstring, the method reserved for royalty, a final compliment from his boyhood friend. It's hard to believe Suleiman would have done it without Hurrem urging him on. She was ruthless because she had to be. The danger to her sons was real. Then tragedy struck. In 1543, her young son Prince Mehmed died of smallpox. Now the race for succession intensified, and Mustafa was the clear front-runner. By the 1550s, Mustafa was in his 30s, tall, strong, handsome, beloved by the army. If he became sultan, Hurrem's surviving sons would be executed. Word reached Suleiman that Mustafa was plotting against him. Hurrem had a powerful ally, the new Grand Vizier, married to her daughter. He was perfectly placed to whisper slanders in the Sultan's ear. When Mustafa reached Suleiman's camp in Iran, he went straight to his father's tent. A Western diplomat reported what happened next. As soon as he entered, several sturdy mutes attacked him. They threw Mustafa to the ground, wrapped a bowstring around his neck, and strangled him. It was said that Suleiman himself urged the mutes to greater efforts. Hurrem was widely blamed, but Suleiman wouldn't have listened if he hadn't felt genuinely threatened. Still, powerful women like Hurrem aroused fierce hostility, just like her contemporaries Elizabeth I, Catherine de Medici, and Mary Queen of Scots. Hurrem became seriously ill. Suleiman, old now and also in poor health, kept vigil at her bedside. But she had a fatal problem. She had 2 surviving sons, and they couldn't both rule. Hurrem died on April 18, 1558, 38 years after entering the harem. She never saw the power struggle between her sons. The younger rebelled against the older, and Suleiman had him executed as a traitor. Suleiman became morbid and religious. 8 years later, he joined Hurrem in death. They were buried together in the cemetery of the Suleimaniya Mosque. Hurrem had devoted 38 years to ensuring one of her sons succeeded. But ironically, instead of producing another Suleiman the Magnificent, she had blazed a trail for future harem women whose power would eclipse even her own. Things were changing in the harem. Ever since Hurrem, women were no longer powerless. The next to rise would build on Hurrem's foundation, but her power would be more as a mother than as a concubine. Born Cecilia Venier Baffo, she was the illegitimate daughter of 2 Venetian noble families. Captured by an Ottoman admiral in 1537 at just 12 years old, she was brought to Istanbul. She was presented to Prince Selim when he was very young. He fell madly in love with her. When he went to the provinces to learn to govern, Selim took her with him. She became known as NURBANU, Princess of Light. As a prince, Selim seems to have been faithful to her, unusual for an Ottoman royal. When Selim became sultan in 1566, NURBANU had a problem. Selim wasn't the greatest catch. He hadn't aged well. Called Selim the Sot for his drinking, he was a grave disappointment after Suleiman the Magnificent. In all their years together, they had only one son, Murad, though they had 4 daughters. This was dangerous. The first duty of any sultan is to produce heirs. Selim had to get on with it, and toward the end of his reign, he did produce more sons with other mothers. This meant future rivals for NURBANU's son. Then Selim died in an ignominious accident. The story goes, he slipped in the bathhouse, hit his head on stone, and died instantly. The death of a sultan was always a crisis. If the new sultan wasn't in Istanbul, rebellion could break out during the transition. NURBANU took control. She hid Selim's body in the palace ice rooms until her son Murad returned from the provinces. She only announced his death after Murad arrived safely. When Murad arrived, he became sultan. But then came the problem of fratricide. He had 5 living brothers in the palace. Murad spent time alone with his mother. It is said she reminded him of his duty to kill his brothers. A Jewish physician recorded that Murad spent days unhappy, thinking about it, but in the end, Ottoman politics left no choice. It was a night of terror in the harem. Murad's first political act was to have his 5 brothers executed. The first sight of Murad's reign was the coffins of little princes emerging from the palace doors. Although fratricide was nothing new, this was the first time it happened under the nose of Istanbul's people. One mother killed herself. She'd failed in her prime function to keep her son alive. But NURBANU was triumphant. As mother of the new sultan, she would now rule the harem. She acquired a new title, Valide Sultan, Queen Mother, Empress Dowager. The Venetian ambassador wrote, "The sultan bases his policies principally on the advice of his mother. All good and all ill come through the Queen Mother." She corresponded with Catherine de Medici, Queen Mother of France. She was absolute top dog in the harem. But there was a threat. Murad had a favorite concubine named Safiye. It was the classic problem, the bride versus the mother-in-law. Against Ottoman tradition, Murad stuck with just Safiye. His job was to produce many sons as insurance, but he wouldn't. NURBANU tried everything, organizing nights with beautiful dancers, gifting him new concubines. Finally, the gift of 2 concubines from his sister did the trick. Murad started sleeping among the women inside the harem, fathering princes with multiple mothers. NURBANU encouraged Murad to take up residence in the harem, giving her more power over him than any woman in Ottoman history. The harem was extended, and numbers rose from 130 to 600 women. The harem became like a department of state, a large corporation with department heads: mistress of sherbets, mistress of dressmaking, mistress of jewels, mistress of coffee, mistress of laundry. At the bottom were basic servants. Above them, the management team led by the harem stewardess. And controlling everything, the black eunuchs, who had access to both the harem and male quarters. NURBANU expressed her power through massive building projects, mosques and military installations. This was a statement on an international scale, traditionally the prerogative of male royalty. When NURBANU died in 1583 at age 58, she received a state funeral. She was the first woman buried in the same tomb as her sultan. Murad walked in front of her casket, a demonstration of her importance. When Murad died in 1595, his successor immediately executed his 19 brothers. 19 coffins came out of the palace gate, and chroniclers wrote that angels in heaven wept. Public outcry ended the practice of killing brothers. Instead, they would be kept alive but confined to the cafes, the cage. Cafes means the cage where birds, chickens, and lions are kept. These were beautiful apartments where princes could live for years, never knowing if they'd be pulled out to become sultan or strangled with a bowstring. The problem was princes were withdrawn from governing. When they became sultan, they knew nothing about politics. That's why their mothers became so important. The woman who used this to her advantage was Kösem Sultan. Her name means the ram that leads the sheep. She possibly was the daughter of a Greek priest. Her reign lasted about 30 years. She was like a female sultan. As favorite of Sultan Ahmed I, she was unusual in having several sons. Kösem came to power when sultans were mad or underage. Her son Murad IV was only 12 when he took the throne.
All power and authority was with the mother. Kösem was what we would call a regent. She wrote candid letters to grand viziers. "I must be driving you nuts with all my questions, but you drive me nuts too. You give me a headache, but I give you an awful headache too."
The Grand Vizier turned to Kösem for everything, even finding food for the army. She wrote, "You say attention must be paid to provisions. If it were up to me, it would have been taken care of long ago." Kösem truly came into her own when her strong son Murad IV died in 1640. He left no heir and had killed all his brothers except one, her other son, Ibrahim. Kösem had persuaded Murad not to kill Ibrahim on the grounds that he was mad. When people came to tell Ibrahim he was sultan, he didn't believe them. He thought it was a trick. They had to bring Murad's dead body and show it to him before he agreed to come out. And when he did, he proved to be a disaster. Nobody expected Ibrahim to become sultan. He was emotionally disturbed, really handicapped. But he was the last Ottoman male alive. Ibrahim was also impotent. If he died childless, the empire would dissolve into civil war. Ambassadors wrote home, "Get ready, this empire might simply collapse." Luckily, the Ottomans had solutions. Special books on sexual matters prescribed remedies. One required hunting 100 large red ants, pouring sesame oil on them, leaving them in the sun for 20 days, then applying the paste to fingers, toes, and armpits. It worked. Kösem took the lead, and Ibrahim was induced to take a concubine. With his first son's birth came a huge sigh of relief. Then Ibrahim went to the other extreme, becoming excessively interested in sex. He was especially fond of fat women. Once he insisted on finding the fattest woman in Istanbul, spending days with her while she told him fairy tales. He became obsessed with fur, imposing a fur tax to line palace rooms with fur and mirrors. He made his sisters wait on his concubines, a complete perversion of palace hierarchy. By 1648, the empire was crumbling. The Venetian navy was at the Dardanelles. Starvation stalked Istanbul. The viziers decided Ibrahim had to be deposed.
Kösem agreed. She wrote to the Grand Vizier, "In the end, he will leave neither you nor me alive. We will lose control. The whole society is in ruins. Have him removed from the throne immediately."
For her political career and the empire's sake, she sacrificed her son. She produced his 7-year-old son to the council. "Here he is. See what you can do with him." With her grandson on the throne, Ibrahim was imprisoned. But Kösem couldn't let him live. His supporters might try to reinstate him. A fatwa was issued. There cannot be 2 sultans in one country. Officials went to the cage and had Ibrahim strangled. But now Kösem had a new problem. Her grandson had a mother, young Turan Sultan, who wanted her share of power. For the first time, the Ottoman Empire had 2 women at the heart of power, both acting as regents. The traditional thing would be for Kösem to retire to the Palace of Tears. But Kösem wasn't ready to give up this intensely exciting political life. She stuck around, and a deadly rivalry began. On the night of September 2, 1651, things came to a head. Kösem wanted to replace her grandson with a more malleable prince. Turan decided to eliminate Kösem to save her son. That night, Turan's people hunted for Kösem. When a eunuch spoke up for her, they split his head with an axe. Blood and brains splashed on rich carpets in front of the boy sultan. Kösem hid in a cupboard, betrayed when the hem of her dress stuck out. They tore the diamond earrings from her ears. 2 diamonds the size of chestnuts with rubies beneath, worth a year's revenue of Cairo. Given to her by Sultan Ahmed, they were her proudest possession. Then they strangled her. Kösem Sultan was controversial, a great manipulator who meddled in politics, acquiring immense wealth and power. But she was also highly praised for her role in keeping the dynasty alive during its darkest period. Her young rival Turhan continued as regent for 5 years before her son took command. The imperial harem continued for another 2.5 centuries. Hundreds of women would disappear into it, but none would play such commanding roles as Hurrem, NURBANU, or Kösem. For centuries, these women were blamed for the empire's decline. But the Ottoman Empire lasted until 1918, another 3 centuries after Kösem's death. The women of the harem had to step in to protect their sultans and guide the empire during crisis. They're blamed for problems they were actually trying to solve. While it's acceptable for men to be ruthless, it's seen differently for women. These women did what they had to do to survive. Some amazing women emerged, but many were submerged, and history doesn't talk about them. They were slaves who became queens, mothers who became regents, and women who proved that even behind the highest walls, power finds a way. This was the hidden world of the Ottoman harem, not a pleasure palace, but a crucible of power where the fate of empires was decided by the most remarkable women in Islamic history.